right, we've hit the top of the hour, and I see folks joining the presentation. We've got a good quorum here, so thank you all for joining. As we get started today, just a couple of housekeeping things before the speakers come on and introduce themselves. There is a Q&A box here on the webinar. Please feel free to put in your questions as the webinar goes on, and we will make sure to tag back to those at the end. If you do put comments in the chat, there may be a chance the speakers catch them, but oftentimes they're busy speaking and don't catch them. So the Q&A area is a great place to put those questions. We'll also be asking a couple poll questions, one in the middle and one at the end, just asking for your feedback on the webinar. The one that we're showing that comes up at the end will be just private. It won't be shared back with the entire group, but a chance for you to provide us feedback on the webinar today. So with that, I am going to turn it over to our lovely panelists to introduce themselves.
I can go first since my name is first. Hey everybody, my name is Priya Kothari. I work at DoorDash on the research team. I in particular lead the Dasher research team. I'm so happy to be here this morning. And for those of you who might be unfamiliar, I hope not. I hope you know that Dashers are the people who pick up your food and drop off to your doorstep or whatever you want. And so, yeah, I've been at DoorDash for 4 years. Over to you, Mark.
Thanks so much, Priya. Hi, everybody. Mark Doherty. I'm a vice president and practice lead here at CMB, heading up retail and e-commerce, and excited to be sharing this journey that we've taken with Priya. And I've been lucky enough to work with Priya for a few years now, both at DoorDash and at a previous employer. So excited to be with you guys. Richard?
Hi, I'm Richard Scionti. I head up product development and innovation here at CMB. Been with CMB about 3.5 years, but in the industry for longer than I like to admit. I say 25 plus years, but I started saying that about 10 years ago. So
Before we go up to the next slide, guys, hit these guys up, CMB. We enjoy working with them, not just great work, but great people too. So you're going to get some great partnership there.
I was trying to figure out how to kick you under the table to say nice things about us, Priya, so I didn't even have to do that. Thank you so much.
Of course.
That should be something added to this instead of just like raising your hand or nudging as a kick under the table.
Kick under the table.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? So I'll get started if you don't mind, guys. We had delivered this presentation at the Corporate Researchers Conference last week, and on my way to Chicago for it, I saw an article in the Wall Street Journal that reported how the big consulting firms are just having a really hard time in the AI space, that all their great work in the traditional tech like ERPs and things like that weren't giving them really any advantage competitively in selling and conducting AI work for their clients. And in fact, the article went so far to wonder what advantage at all they offered over kids out of college or even kids still in it. And the article quoted a CIO, I think, who said, oftentimes it feels like these big consulting firms are learning on our dime. Now, as much as I like to give the big consulting firms a hard time, I don't know if I actually believe that these firms offer zero competitive advantage over college kids, but I do think the article is right in suggesting there's a really level playing field in the AI space. And the fact of the matter is, there just aren't that many true experts in this area, and next to nobody with a very long track record in this space, given how new all of this is. And it's our take that what's going to separate the winners from the losers here has way more to do with the process that you use to build and pilot and implement these potentially really game-changing technologies, and how well you identify and collaborate with the right partners on this journey. And that's really what drove our decision to present here with you today. The trust we've built up with DoorDash over the years, I think, allows us to come together, work with them to successfully work in this kind of space. And we're really excited to share with you the journey that we took with Priya and her team to pilot these AI personas, and specifically how we worked with them in kind of taking in a great deal of past research that they've done, both quant and qual, along with all these large scale behavioral data to really build what's really an always on advisor for smarter and faster decision making. And so we're here happy to talk to you about the good, bad, and maybe even a little bit of the ugly about doing work like this. So, but before we dive in, I wanted to just share from my experience, and I don't know if I have more or less than Richard, but I've been with CMB for 33 years, and I wanted to share some context that I've developed from dealing with clients about some of the factors that are driving and maybe even inhibiting a little bit their adoption into this space. And so what we're looking at is a few different things that might be motivating or driving. Certainly the velocity of decision making and budget, the kind of evergreen challenges that AI might hold a promise to help with. And I've learned over the last few years with my clients that it's the timing that is as much of a factor as it is the budget, that the speed of decision making is going so fast that they're looking for any alternatives that's going to help them help inform those decisions a little bit faster. And I think that's part of the promise of AI. The third thing is really interesting because it's kind of two sides of things. Insights departments are always dealing with their stakeholders to either motivate them to get more engaged in the insights world, or if they're already super fired up, to kind of manage them and govern a little bit and set up processes. And I think that that's what's happening here, is that AI could maybe help in either evangelizing things, get people going and democratize the insights, or to create processes and ways that for those that are going off on their own outside of the insights team to get useful insights, or at least get help refine some hypotheses. The last thing on the slide that I want to mention is maybe one of the inhibitors. I find with the insights departments that I'm dealing with that one of the biggest challenges is that there's literally hundreds of different technologies out there, and clients like Priya and others just don't have the bandwidth to be vetting all of those. And so I think that's what I was referring to earlier about making sure you have the right partner who can help Richard and his team that do that kind of work, can provide that value to folks like Priya so that she can manage research and get to know the Dasher community so well. So again, those are a few challenges that I think are drawing and maybe inhibiting in that space. Richard?
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I really thought it would be helpful if we could go through the builds for the 4 columns here. Thought it would be helpful to sort of talk about where AI simulations fit into the research landscape. If we focus first on the couple of columns in the middle, conducting research and analyzing research, CMB's been active in those areas really since the release of ChatGPT in November of 2022. We knew that generative AI is likely to be very consequential in our space, and we started leaning in. And in particular, doing qualitative at scale, doing activities that allow us to combine qual and quant, and focusing on data integrity and also qual analytics. I think those are the areas where we've been most active up to date. But we're really excited about sort of what we're calling extending research through these personas. Personas have always been a bridge between data and action, helping teams to humanize research, but also keep customer and audience perspectives front and center. But frankly, the challenge with that has been often these personas are artifacts that are trapped in PowerPoint presentations. And so activating them can be a challenge. With AI simulations, we bring them to life. These are dynamic, they're testable, they're continuously evolving, and can work throughout your organization, not just on the insights team. We see this capability as really an extension of the insight team's toolkit. Importantly, this isn't just an LLM. This is models that are trained on primary research, secondary research that you've done. We've also used other sources like social and third-party research to inform these personas. And the key differentiator, I think, is that this enables you, to take research outcomes and drive them into your business to do work for you elsewhere. And Priya has some great examples, even at this early stage of the pilot. I think, Mark, it's back to you.
Okay, so before we dive into the details, want to just hear from you guys a little bit of trying to get a sense of where folks are on this journey to using AI, and recognizing that people can be at lots of different places on this. And so, I'd be curious to hear from you guys as to, are you just starting to think about it? Kind of just, are you actually moving into the planning? Are you actually doing some things, starting to test options and such? Or have you rolled out personas in your organization? So it'd be helpful for us to get a read where you guys are on that journey. So take a second, please feel free to jot it down, hit a button.
All right, Mark, looks like we got a quorum here. So sharing the results out.
Okay, so not surprisingly, it looks like just about half are at the thinking about it phase. About 1 in 5 are early planning. 30% actively considering a testing, and not surprising, a couple of people involved are actually rolling something out. So yeah, that probably doesn't surprise me. Maybe I would have expected a little flip. It's not small sample here, a little flip between the actively considering and early planning. Wouldn't surprise me if it kind of went down as we went further in the journey.
That's
But
what
yeah,
I was say, Mark. I was thinking that the funnel would look like a funnel.
yeah. I guess that's what you'd get with small sample sizes to some degree. But yeah, no, that's super helpful to hear, and thanks so much for sharing. So let's dive in here. The process we're going to take over the next few minutes is going to be, we're going to start hearing from Priya, really what drove DoorDash. I talked a little bit about some of the things that were driving or inhibiting adoption of these types of things. Let's have Priya talk specifically about her journey, and then talk a little bit about how those personas are being built and tested, how they're being applied, and then let's talk about the lessons learned and future applications for you guys, that where you are on that journey, knowing that so many people are in that early stages. Hopefully we can help you along that journey. So let's pass it on to Priya.
Thank you, Mark. Cool. So Mark was telling you guys earlier how there are challenges that everybody experiences. Obviously, DoorDash does too. But what's unique about where I am coming from at DoorDash is the challenges specifically working with the Dasher community, right? These are gig workers. These are not they're not employees of DoorDash. They do other gig jobs too. They do Lyft, they do Uber, Instacart, Amazon Flex, tons of them. So you can imagine their ability to participate in research, even if the research is scheduled in advance, it can change very quickly. So then we have to deal with a lot of no-shows. We have to schedule with a different Dasher or reschedule with the same Dasher. I was sharing earlier that in my first couple of months-ish at DoorDash, I had more no-shows waiting for Dashers to show up for interviews, and more no-shows that way than my entire 20 or 18, whatever year-long career before I joined DoorDash. So definitely kind of puts things in perspective. The other challenge we have is sometimes when we are interviewing Dashers, we are actually talking about some pretty sensitive policy related stuff. And we do need to discuss that with Dashers in a way where they understand the concept, but we cannot give away the screens to them just yet, right? We don't want people screenshotting and stuff like that. So that can, we have to involve our legal team, and they say, okay, you can and cannot say this. You can present a concept this way, that way. You cannot use these numbers. So then all of that, again, is time consuming. Sometimes these policies apply to some areas and not to others. They might apply to New York City, they might apply to Seattle, but not others, or they might apply just to the state of California. So then we have to now spend the time making sure we're recruiting Dashers or getting representation from Dashers in these different geographies. And then in addition to that, sometimes when you're showing these screens to Dashers, what we've seen is we end up having to make these screens fairly realistic, very polished, real numbers, real scenarios. They can over fixate on some of the details, and then the concept doesn't make sense to them. So then all in all, like coming up with those realistic screens and creating those realistic stimuli also adds time to the research prep process, right? So it's challenging to have constant and reliable access, and have reliable access to different segments of the Dasher population. So those were some of the unique challenges, I think, or those are some of the unique challenges that we experience. Next slide. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, yeah. So, we went through a process. We looked at a lot of platforms. We had some basic table stakes that any platform would have to meet. It has to be global, it has to be agile, it has to be always on. It has to allow for human in the loop to make sure that we can tweak and adjust where we need to. It has to be secure by design, and where a company like DoorDash could confidently fit it into its technical fabric and have access to it. Importantly for us, we wanted to make sure that it could train on a wide range of content. So quantitative data, qualitative data, social forums. In DoorDash's case, a lot of behavioral data that came out of the Dasher app, which is the key way that Dashers interact with DoorDash and with the tasks they have to do. And then some cultural trend data and legislative content and things like that as well. Importantly, the process had to be transparent. We weren't looking for something that sort of operated as a black box where, in the end, you wonder, what is it that I'm looking at? This is based on a very transparent process that has artifacts that are generated that help you understand that signals are strong here, signals are weaker there. And we're going to go through the process in a minute, but it's sort of an ongoing process of addressing gaps and testing its use. They really are always on available subject matter experts that are a real companion and extension to the research team. And importantly, they're not robots. They're personas, so they have empathy, they have nuance. It's driven by consumer psychology based perspectives.
All right, let's get into the process, which looks very well defined and well crafted. It wasn't quite like that. It was a little bit of figuring out what happens, but let me try to attempt to explain what we did. We definitely had a lot of fun coming up with this, but first we had to start with identifying a very specific area of research within which we wanted to experiment and build out these personas, right? And when the team first came to me, that I actually didn't have a hard time identifying that at all, because having done years of research with Dashers, especially in the earnings area, we already knew, and we kind of already talked about Dashers in this way, that there are segments of Dashers, that there are personas of Dasher when it comes to how income reliant the Dasher is on DoorDash, right, as a means of income. So there are sort of three distinct personas that exist. This is a bit simplified, but there's a Dasher who relies a fair amount on income from dashing. And on the other end of the spectrum, there's a Dasher who only dashes occasionally and hence does not rely that much on income from dashing, probably has income from other jobs or other gig jobs or whatever. And then there's a spectrum of everything in between, which we're sort of calling as the Dasher who somewhat relies on DoorDash, right? So keeping sort of those personas in mind, we said, okay, can we build out those personas? But in order to do that, we had to first start with the curation phase, where we ended up collecting a ton of data that we already had, right? So what did we already know about Dashers and their income reliance on DoorDash? We had years of firsthand data. There were videos from interviews, there were transcripts, there were research project notes, there were presentations, slide decks, memos, all of that. Then we also worked with our data scientists to get behavioral data. So I identified a ton of different behavioral sort of expressions that we see from these Dashers based on their segments. So what is their hourly dashing income? What are the total number of hours per week that these different types of Dashers would spend dashing? Are there patterns in that? Are they dashing mostly on the weekdays, mostly on the weekends, mostly lunchtime, mostly dinner time, or what is it? What is their acceptance rate of the orders that DoorDash gives them? So tons of behavioral data got appended to this. We had some demographic data, not a ton, but we knew a little bit about who dashes, men versus women, where they live geographically, because we knew where they live as in where they dash, part-time versus full-time. We had some age data. We also had some data from social channels. So I'd say Reddit and Facebook are the primary communities where Dashers are really active. So now we have all of these different sources of data, curated all of these years of data, and that's what took us into the training phase, because all of this data had to be ingested, and then the intelligent personas could be created based on this, right? And then not too long after that is when we began the testing phase. The four functions that primarily carried us through the testing phase, functions as in like job functions at DoorDash, were research, product design, product management, and data science. Those I would say are the primary functions. Richard, you want to carry us on through what we did after that?
Yeah, I mean, as Priya just described, we're talking about an iterative process, right? That at the end of that process of creating these personas and validating them, we had personas that we felt were strong and relevant to what DoorDash is trying to do. But we also know that longer term, this really requires sort of a continuous enrichment process. It could be that your research, the research plans that you have for, fiscal year 26, you can continue to use that data to train up the personas so that they're relevant and they're timely. But in addition, you want to bring in contextual data. We were talking at one stage of the pilot about the fact that no tax on tips is sort of a relevant new phenomenon, that we need to be able to factor into how personas think. And you want economic and market conditions that are up to date, cultural trends as they unfold. So that continuum, ensures your simulations don't just launch strong and relevant, but they stay strong and relevant.
Cool. We can introduce the personas. Great. Actually, you guys are going to see a video demo of these personas, but let me just real quickly talk through them. So these are, remember I said there were 3 Dasher sort of segments, personas. So these are our representative personas. So we have Marcus, who is very income reliant on DoorDash. Then we have Jessica, who's a part-time Dasher, as we describe it, has another job, but also supplements her income via DoorDash. And then there's Dylan, who is a sort of an occasional Dasher and is a college student, doesn't rely that much on DoorDash for income. Okay, should we do this? Should we watch a video of the demo? Before we start playing this, actually, because I'm not sure how much I can get to pause and explain. So let me kind of tee it up of what you guys are going to watch. But you'll see me asking a question. You'll see our researcher, actually, I should say, not me, asking a question about a potential feature that we at DoorDash think might actually help Dashers get closer to their desired earnings on DoorDash. And you're going to see the research lead asking this of Dylan, who's the not income reliant Dasher, and also of Marcus. And pay attention, hopefully you can see the text on the slide, but pay attention to how they're responding very differently. And then we'll also ask Marcus a follow-up question about some recommendations. So note that it's kind of interesting that the Dashers are not just reacting to an idea, but are also kind of co-creating a little bit, giving ideas of what's going to happen. So, okay, go for it. Yeah, so Dylan says is anybody else able to read the response? I can summarize it, Monica, before we move to the next slide. But basically this question about, would you be interested in a way for DoorDash or the Dasher app to allow you to explicitly set an earnings goal and so that you can kind of get, it is blurry, we're sorry. So that you can get close to that goal. And Dylan, you guys, who's the not income reliant Dasher, finds it too much commitment, right? He's not looking around to staying on DoorDash to hit a big number. He's in and out of there quickly, so he's not going to find something like that motivating. But sort of summary for Marcus is that this is already aligning with his current behavior, where he tracks his earnings after each delivery, and so he's the one who's more interested. And then when we talk about what recommendations would you expect to receive from DoorDash, this is where I was saying it's actually pretty neat that the persona is able to offer suggestions and brainstorm completely open-ended. So what Marcus is saying in the blurry response is that it would be great because DoorDash has all this data, and can look at Marcus's past dashing patterns and maybe across other dashers as well, suggest better neighborhoods to dash in, maybe they're better tipping neighborhoods, and then best times to dash as well. Should we do the other demo, Monica, which is showing or we're just going to move forward?
Or maybe just talk through it, Priya, because people can't see it. Maybe just talk. I think it's important to at least talk through because it's really useful.
Yeah. So I can be quick because it'll not make sense much without stuff on the screen. But we have done a ton of also showing screen designs and to dashers, and we've seen that it's kind of interesting that these personas are expressing, especially Marcus, they're expressing skepticism in a way that feels real, and it feels like what we already hear and experience from talking to real dashers as well. And there's also skepticism around, okay, great, DoorDash, I get that you're trying to do this for me, but I would need to actually verify against what I see on the road as well. And so that is actually, that's encouraging that it's not just, an echo chamber of great, what you often see on ChatGPT, where you ask them like, hey, do you think I should do this? Like behave like this. And they're like, great, you found the answer for yourself. It's not like that.
Sorry for the technical issues, guys. We will make sure in the follow-ups that you guys are able to see some of that information.
Okay, so this is me as well. So what are we going to do with these AI personas? We actually see a ton of different ways in which we can kind of supercharge our research and product development process. We think it'd be cool to use these personas in a design critique session, even fairly early on in the process, right? So they'd literally be a participant in the room doing the design critique with us. And so one thing that's interesting that I want to try is, like I was saying to you guys, we ended up having to show dashers really finished screens. I would like to work with these personas and show them hand-drawn sketches and see if they can even respond to stuff like that. So that's something we want to work with our designer, our product designer on. You saw in the demo video, I know it went by fast and blurry, but we can use them to co-create, right? Ask them something like, what type of features would make sense to you and why? And if we are able to continue the training process, we could tie in more daily streaming of social posts, and we could even simulate reactions from dashers before launching. And so we can sort of de-risk our bets and predict how they might be perceived and received by dashers. And then finally, there's a way in which I think we can get these personas introduced to our new hires. These are the employees at DoorDash, and maybe when they're onboarding, they can already start having conversations with Dasher personas before they get their account activated and go Dash and, do shadowing and stuff like that. Cool. But I will say that I think some of you had this question in the chat, which I can talk about a little bit more later on too. But I wanted to say that there's this tool, obviously, we've been talking about it for the last half an hour. It's an amazing tool. It promises to expand the ways in which we can conduct research, right? Expand the speed at which we can do product development. And so the thing that I realized when we were working on this slide is that three of us, Mark and Richard and myself, we kept calling them Dasher personas. I still don't think I'm there where I'm calling them dashers per se, or like a replacement to human beings. What really keeps me going as a researcher every day is that when you're out there doing research with real people, there's a certain amount of reality and empathy and a human connection that you build, and you're not going to get that from dashers. They're going to tell you what might work and what might not work, but they're not going to be able to express an innermost fear or value or hope or challenge or whatever that is, right? So that's the thing that keeps me going every day. So I wanted to leave you guys with a quick video clip. that tells you why this is never going to replace real?
I just turned 60. I take care of my grandson, along with my daughter. The three of us live together. So I started dashing because I'm on Social Security and I can't make ends meet on Social Security. So I started dashing as a way to basically be flexible. So I could do it whenever I wanted. I have aches and pains and things, and some days I just can't do it. And with a regular job, I'm not calling out of a job. So I need a job that's flexible for me. I worked in offices for 40 years. So this is just a way that I can make money, like if I have to take Joseph somewhere or whatever. My daughter's been very sick for the last since COVID, so it's been a struggle. But I will tell you, door dashing did kind of save me last year. I was able to pay bills, and buy food and pay the electric bill and things like that. So it really helped me, and I love it.
Well, and let me just say overall, I appreciate DoorDash. Like I said, being a widow and 3 kids and a kid in school, if it weren't for, I'm going to cry. If it weren't for DoorDash, I wouldn't have made it. So I appreciate having it. And especially if they can do some stuff to help, compensate for, mileage and gas and that time that's not being, that we just kind of have to eat ourselves. That would be helpful. But I do want to say that I am grateful for DoorDash and for everything y'all do. So thank you.
I was just going to say that the things that move you as a researcher, the part that's edited out of the video is my designer and me doing this interview, and both of us also crying alongside her. So.
I think that's a a really powerful, way to wrap up. The objective of this, as Priya just demonstrated, is not to replace conversations with real dashers, but since they are such a precious commodity, try to learn from what we know about them already, so that they can be judicious about when they talk to them in person and get the most out of it. I think it doesn't take much of an imagination to look at we're at the beginning of this journey, so I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I think this has the potential, not just to be a new tool in the tool belt, but really the potential to be a new operating system for customer centricity. They turn research from static snapshots into living, breathing profiles that evolve with the market. And they don't just sit inside the insights function, but it gives Priya and her team the ability to activate across design, across marketing, onboard new employees, and impact the velocity of their product development. And because they're powered by continuous loop, they don't go stale, and they grow smarter, faster, maybe even more relevant, as they evolve. So the shift is an important one from personas as an artifact to personas as an engine for empathy, an engine for speed, an engine for foresight. And the opportunity in front of us is to, stop talking about the customer and start working with the customer every day, in every sprint, in every decision point. So, we feel strongly that eventually AI-enabled personas are going to make that possible. And the organization that embraces them first will have a competitive innovation advantage, leaving it to everyone else to catch up. So.
Thanks, Richard. And as we wrap up, I just want to make the offer to those of you, particularly seeing the poll results, seeing so many people at the top end of that journey. There's some different ways that we might be able to help you kind of move on from here. Those that are forgetting about personas for a sec, but for those of you that are just kind of early in the AI world in itself, happy to do a bit of an audit or assessment to help understand where the opportunities, where the challenges are that are unique to you and your organization, just like Priya had talked about some of the specific challenges and opportunities that DoorDash have. Happy to help you kind of think through that early stage audit and assessment. if personas on your radar, happy to talk about what's there to help you think through what would be required to do that. And then if you're ready to dive in and need a partner, we're happy to do that with you as well, to talk about what's going to be required to train those AI experts up that really reflect the insights that you've been able to build up and acquire over the last year or two. So I think that covers it from our end. If there's other things that you're looking to talk about with us, we're happy to share it. We will definitely spit back out to you the reporting and the recording of this. And we also have an AI plus HI guide that if you're interested in, we can send to you as well. And happy to have the conversation. As I said, as I said at the outset, there's nobody with real long track records in this. So you want to find a partner that you can trust, that's transparent, that can kind of work with you through this new world order. And hopefully we've been able to demonstrate to you that we're someone that can do that. So happy to have that conversation. Thanks so much.
And we have a ton of questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch the feedback poll that's for you to take in your own time. We won't be sharing those out. But in the meantime, I'm going to throw up some questions for you guys. The first one I have here from Sasha says, building these custom AI tools for business can be an investment. How did you position the business case for ROI and impact internally to justify funding? I think this is for you, Priya.
Yeah. So I think along with this answer, I might end up answering some of the other questions as well. Like I talked about, the speed of product development at DoorDash is kind of insane. And I also kind of concluded the talk saying that we cannot replace real research. And both of those are true. Where we think we can really leverage these AI personas are a little bit in the early on exploratory, or currently at least the way it's working, I think for us is heavier in the exploratory phase of research. We want our designers to be able to get feedback fairly early and fairly often, right? And that's where I was describing that there are lots of issues trying to set up research continuously, schedule, reschedule. And we thought, hey, what about if the designer's having a ton of explorations, instead of trying to put every single thing in front of a dasher, what if we use these AI personas to guide the earlier design process, to guide the earlier brainstorm process, so that we can spend the time and energy to interview people, to put them design concepts in front of them, to do whatever we need to do in a fully invested manner with real human beings a little bit later in the process. Maybe we can start to already put our best foot forward. So this is in complement. So we can think about sort of increasing the pace of research and increasing the number of reps of research with people, and there'll be research with personas and then research with people. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it. Yeah, so I think it'll ultimately help more people to kind of throw more ideas out at these personas, and it expands and sort of democratizes the number of people who can be coming up with ideas, because they don't have to always validate an idea with a real dasher.
Awesome. The next question I have is, can you kind of speak to if and how you're putting this tool in the hands of other teams like marketing or strategy?
Marketing, I don't think we are at that place yet. I will actually talk about another idea that we have. I wouldn't say we've done it, because this is just like a new idea. We've just been working in the Dasher world on the Dasher earnings team. But another designer and she and I were brainstorming, and we said, hey, she was talking to me about some of her projects where you can imagine sometimes there are fraudulent bad actors in the system, and we think we know what we have done is going to prevent fraud, but from all different angles, like all types of audiences, there can be very creative fraudsters. And I almost started to think that, hey, why don't we train these personas on every darn fraud thing that has ever happened? And from that point onwards, you come up with a new idea and you show these personas. And what if we start asking these personas, how would you commit fraud in this case, right? I'm not saying these personas, but like think about a scenario where you have, I don't know if you guys have heard about that, but like major fraudsters, the FBI hires them to identify how people might have committed fraud. And I was thinking maybe this could be something like that, and we could work with it on the dasher space, on the consumer space, because sometimes we unfortunately have even consumers who will get their food, eat it, and say that my food never arrived, or like there's blame game happening over there. So I don't know. That's kind of my most recent idea for extending this. But marketing, I don't know. I haven't honestly gotten to that yet.
I love that
Awesome.
idea for a white hat persona, who can help you suss out fraud. That's interesting.
Yeah, great. The next question I have, maybe Richard, I'm not sure, Priya, you might be able to answer this as well, but Marlena asks, how are the personas tested and validated?
Yeah, so a really good question. I did mention that in the curation phase, we sent tons and tons of research reports and interview guides and this and that. What I didn't mention is that we held back some research data, and we didn't feed like all the interview guides and all the transcripts for every project. And then what the lead researcher on earnings did is she took some of her most recent while this was in training, she also worked on a few other projects, and she took some of her most recent projects and just asked the exact same questions from the interview guide that she had literally just conducted in the week before with 10 or 12 dashers to these personas, and then kind of compared the answers against what real people would answer and what she knows from years of working in this space. And then we were able to go back, and that's the iterative part that Richard mentioned, go back to these personas and say that, work with CMB and say that, hey, it's this didn't work out, or this is feeling off from what a dasher we think in this persona might answer. That's kind of how we just iteratively fed and trained these personas. So like a little bit of stress testing.
Yeah. I can add to that. I mentioned that there's a sort of a transparent process. You do the training on the data that's curated, and you get a report, that sort of identifies all these different attributes of the personas that are being generated, and a strength of signal score around them. And that strength of signal, sort of reflects, did this come from just one data point, or did this come from multiple sources? It helps to help you understand like where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are. And as we iterated through the process, as Priya just suggested, they said, oh, I see that that's a little bit weak, but we've actually done some research in that area. So let's bring that research to the table and help improve the persona performance. So it's an active, not a passive, but an active process of testing, validating, and improving.
Richard, I'm blanking in the moment, but does it also cite its references? Like, can you click through and find the source of its conclusions and statements?
Yeah, and you can ask it follow-up questions.
Yeah.
You can say, for example, one of the things we've talked about is obviously when a persona is representing a multi-dimensional group of people, the answers you tend to get are toward the mean. But you could ask that persona about, are there what are other views that maybe aren't as predominant, right? So you can drill below the surface in ways that are interesting and valuable.
Yeah.
A related question, this one's maybe for you, Mark. What are the keys to collaborating successfully in building personas? So, tell us a little bit about your role in this and how you kind of kept it all together.
There's a couple of things that I think is critical, and I was trying to refer to it at the upfront is, recognizing across both groups, both us and Priya and her team, that this is kind of new and there's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be a lot of imperfection. There's going to be a lot of, we're going to do a few rounds at each stage. Let's make sure you're comfortable. Let's put in more information. And so I think the part of the ground rules is just understanding that we're in this together, that we're all after the same goal, and that it might be a little bumpy at times because this is a new journey and we don't know exactly the steps to take. But I think the biggest one is having that trust and faith in each other and being kind of transparent throughout on both ends about what's going to work and what the challenges are. And as Priya gets feedback from others, her clearly stating that to us so we can make sure to help her with her stakeholders. And when there's things that we might not be able to get exactly right, that we just talk about it and think about what the next steps might be given the realities of where we are right now.
Perfect. One other thing that came up here from Cameron, what steps did you take to ensure the research was used correctly, that people aren't taking the research and misunderstanding it or making decisions on it? What guardrails did you or are you introducing, Priya?
Can you repeat that, Monica? The research not
I think what they're saying is these personas, right? What steps did you take to make sure that as you're giving access to these personas to folks on your team, that they're using them appropriately?
Oh, that is a good question. So, in all honesty, beyond the Dasher earnings team, we have not broadly started, infusing these persona use throughout the company. But that's a really good question. What I will say that, well, one of the things is we do not want these to ever replace research for sure. That's one thing. The second thing I will say is when we start introducing these throughout the company, I think there's going to be a process between now and then where these personas probably need training on all other aspects of a Dasher's experience. They're not quite there yet, right? So we want to make sure that people are not taking these sort of out of context, because it's not going to work without training them on Dasher experience with the real world. How do you get out of your car, and what happens at the merchant when you're interacting with the merchant at pickup time? What happens when you're trying to go find the consumer's house and drop off? And I think that is sort of the biggest guardrail that we want to put, what context you're using it in. Right now, our testing playground was with Dasher earnings, and I think we'll have to create new testing playgrounds and make sure that you kind of stay within that guardrail. Of course, the future vision could be that these personas are literally have experienced and learned and ingested everything that Dashers have, and then the playground sort of increases. But I think right now it's primarily what context you're exploring and interacting with them in.
Yeah. Julia asks, would you say that using AI personas can help extend the longevity of a segmentation? I don't know who wants to grab that one. Mark, maybe?
Yeah, I think it definitely can extend the useful life of a segmentation. I think one of the things Richard mentioned before is oftentimes what happens with segmentations or personas is they end up just kind of being these ending up on a shelf collecting dust. But with a tool like this, particularly if it's something that eventually maybe stage 2 or 3 gets trained into the hands of people who can use it outside of the insights group, I think we'll absolutely be able to extend the life of segmentation and also incorporate other research outside of the segmentation to kind of collaborate and bring in other learnings and other behavioral data. So I definitely feel like it'll extend the life of a segmentation.
Awesome. We have 2 last questions here. One from Carly. I'm going to pull the last section of her question. Are there certain types of research questions where you rely on this more than others, or certain questions where it works better than others? I know, Richard or Priya, you want to answer that?
I can take a shot, and then Richard, you can go too. So currently, as it stands, it seems like they are doing a little bit better when shown stimuli, which is like, here's an idea. So let me restate that. So by stimuli, I don't mean like totally finished designs, but an example of what this idea could look like. They seem to be doing better over there, as opposed to just completely open-ended. I think with completely open-ended, what we have seen is that the answers from like one or the other Dasher tend to be sort of more similar across 2 open-ended questions. And so there are 2 things here. One is, I think the more we train, obviously, the better these are going to get. And second is just the reason that just the fact that they are actually responding better to stimuli should we train them such that we use them more as in the product designing phase, so that they learn more through that and they learn to sort of have a point of view based on what that interaction is, right? Like sort of reverse, instead of teaching them what the Dasher point of view always is. It's not always, because it's always evolving, but like you show them things, make them talk and make them express and make them question, and that would sort of in turn feed and help them create a point of view. So yeah, so they're doing a little bit better with showing them stimuli right now.
Great. And I know, Priya, we had a conversation before this about kind of what other kinds of jobs could be impactful for these personas. And I want to make sure that you had a chance to answer that. You might have earlier. I just wanted to make sure.
Sure. That's the one actually that I called out earlier, where
Oh, great.
yeah,
Okay.
I think they could
I have
be sort of a fraud detection.
fraud.
Yeah.
All right. I want to make sure that we had gotten that in, because I was excited that you had kind of some of those cool insights. So the very last question is, did you get any pushback internally with the methodology? Were some people uncomfortable with it?
No, surprisingly not. I would say that DoorDash is a probably not very unique from other companies. I'm sure you guys all have good experiences too, but it's a very AI forward company. And like I said, there's a really good balance on when you don't lose the human perspective, when you don't lose the rigor of research and the joy and empathy that comes from it, but also if it's being used to sort of supercharge your process, make upfront innovation more efficient, we're all for that, right? Like we're all for using AI in product as well. So yeah, so actually, no, we quite the opposite. And also working with CMB, I think carries a lot of weight as well. We've worked with CMB a lot, so it's not like we're partnering with someone else for the first time and there's no track record there.
Yep, absolutely. Someone snuck in a last question, and I'll ask it of you, Richard. How have we been using the AI tools like these for other types of research projects that are not persona based?
Yeah, so I think, we've been doing a lot around, as I mentioned earlier, sort of qual scale and qual-quant integration, where, we're just giving a stronger qualitative voice to respondents in research projects. And we're seeing that impact in a lot of different ways. For example, we did a study recently where we added AI probes on open ends to a conjoint study. And the use of those AI probes after someone made their trade-off selections was really useful in sort of driving better engagement by the respondents. When we look at AI, there are sort of a handful of things where that matter to us. If we can improve data quality, data integrity, we want to do that. If we can improve the respondent experience, we want to do that. The better the experience, the more honest and available data you're going to get from that respondent. And we love the idea of challenging ourselves on methodologies. So, being able to combine capabilities to do something new that helps us to get at insights that we may be harder to get at previously.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank everybody for their time today. This was a really insightful and informative webinar. We will be sending out the recording shortly. There is the QR code there for the guide if you're interested in that, but feel free to reach out to Mark or any of us on the team if you have questions, want to pursue or explore opportunities. We're happy to help there. So thank you all for joining today, and we will see you all at the next webinar.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye.